Standing before the Great Pyramid of Giza, you can almost feel the weight of history pressing against your skin. The sheer scale of it is staggering, but what's even more remarkable is what lies beneath the surface. Every stone, every passage, every perfectly aligned corridor is a deliberate choice, a silent message from a civilization long gone. This isn't just architecture, it's a language of symbols woven into the very fabric of these ancient structures, waiting for those who know how to listen. From the pyramids of Egypt to the temples of the Maya, these buildings were never just shelters or monuments. They were vessels of meaning, designed to communicate secrets across millennia. Think about it. Why would a society invest so much time, labor, and precision into something that goes far beyond mere function? The answer lies in the symbols. The ancients didn't just build, they encoded. They embedded their understanding of the cosmos, their spiritual beliefs, and even their warnings into the angles of walls, the placement of doorways, and the carvings on pillars. Take the Mayans, for example. Their pyramids weren't just stairways to the heavens, they were celestial calendars, aligning with the stars to mark time with breathtaking accuracy. Or consider the Greeks, whose temples were meticulously designed to reflect harmony and balance, mirroring their philosophical ideals. These weren't random choices. They were deliberate, calculated, and rich with intention. So what were they trying to tell us? What knowledge were they so desperate to preserve that they etched it into stone? That's the mystery we're about to unravel. This video is a journey into the hidden language of symbols, a code left behind by civilizations who knew their words might not survive, but their buildings would. We'll explore how these ancient architects turned stone into scripture and how their messages still resonate today. Whether it's the sacred geometry of the Egyptians or the astronomical precision of the Maya, one thing is clear: these structures are more than ruins. They're conversations across time, and we're just beginning to understand what they're saying. Ready to decode the past? Let's begin. Symbols are the silent storytellers of history, whispering secrets across time without a single spoken word. Think of the ankh, that looped cross cradled in the hands of Egyptian gods. It wasn't just a decorative charm, it pulsed with meaning, a promise of eternal life woven into its very shape. Or the intricate mandalas adorning Hindu temples, their concentric circles mirroring the universe itself, a map of cosmic order etched in stone. These weren't mere decorations, they were portals. Portals that connected the everyday to the eternal, the human to the divine. What's fascinating is how these symbols repeat across cultures, like echoes of a shared understanding. The spiral, for instance, appears in Celtic carvings, Native American petroglyphs, and even the labyrinthine corridors of Minoan palaces. It's a symbol of journey, of cycles, birth, death, and rebirth. This wasn't coincidence. Ancient architects wielded symbols like a language, embedding them into walls, doorways, and altars with deliberate precision. Take the lotus flower in Buddhist temples, rising pristine from muddy waters. It wasn't just a pretty motif. It was a lesson in resilience, a visual hymn to enlightenment emerging from struggle. But why carve these ideas into stone? Why not just write them down? Because symbols transcend the limits of language. A word can be forgotten, a text can crumble, but a symbol, when etched into the bones of a building, becomes immortal. The Mayans knew this. Their pyramids weren't just stacked stone. They were mountains of meaning, their steps counting the movements of Venus, their alignments tracing the path of the sun. Every angle was a sentence, every terrace a paragraph in their celestial dialogue. And then there's the politics of symbols. The eagle perched on Roman standards wasn't just a mascot, it was a declaration of power, a visual shorthand for empire. The same way the dragon coiled around Chinese palace roofs wasn't merely mythic decor, it was a reminder of imperial authority, a symbol so potent it could unite or intimidate with a glance. These icons were tools wielded by rulers and priests to shape beliefs, enforce order, and even predict the future. So the next time you stand before an ancient ruin, look closer. Those carvings, those patterns, they're not random, they're a conversation. A civilization's hopes, fears, and deepest truths frozen in stone, waiting for someone to listen. And the remarkable thing, even now, millennia later, we're still deciphering their whispers. The pyramids of Egypt stand as silent mathematicians, their geometry speaking a language more precise than words. Every measurement, every angle holds meaning, like the Great Pyramid's base, which aligns almost perfectly with the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, with an error margin smaller than a fraction of a degree. How did a civilization without modern tools achieve such staggering accuracy? The answer lies in their obsession with harmony, a belief that the earthly and celestial realms mirrored one another. Take the pyramid's slope, rising at 52 degrees, a deliberate choice echoing the angle, needed to reflect light in a way that made the structure glow like a second sun. Then there's the golden ratio, that mystical proportion found in seashells and galaxies, hidden in the pyramid's dimensions. Even pi, the infinite number governing circles, appears in the relationship between the pyramid's height and perimeter. These weren't happy accidents, they were sacred equations carved into stone to mirror the order of the cosmos. But the real marvel is how these structures converse with the sky. The shafts inside the Great Pyramid don't just vent air, they point directly to Orion's belt and the pole star, celestial markers tied to rebirth and the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. The pyramids at Giza even mirror the stars of Orion's belt in their layout, a terrestrial echo of the heavens. This wasn't just astronomy, it was a bridge between worlds, a way to tether human destiny to the eternal. And the hieroglyphs, they're only half the story. While the walls recite spells for the dead, the architecture itself preaches a sermon on balance. The pyramid's perfect symmetry wasn't just for grandeur, it embodied Mat, the Egyptian principle of cosmic order, where every line held the universe's equilibrium in place. Even the materials whispered meaning, limestone from the east bank symbolizing life and the rising sun, while the darker granite of burial chambers spoke of the underworld's mystery. So what secrets remain? Some scholars whisper of hidden chambers, undiscovered passages that might hold lost technologies or star maps. Others speculate the pyramids were energy conduits, their geometry harnessing unseen forces. Whatever the truth, one thing's certain, these monuments were never just tombs. They were textbooks in stone, written in a language of angles and alignments, waiting for us to decipher their final lessons. While the Egyptians aligned their pyramids with distant stars, the Maya turned their temples into living clocks, their stone steps ticking away the centuries with celestial precision. At Chichen Itza during the spring and autumn equinoxes, a spectacle unfolds. The setting sun casts shadows along the pyramid staircase, creating the illusion of a serpent slithering down to earth. This isn't just artistry, it's a meticulously engineered alignment, a reminder that for the Maya, time wasn't linear. It was a cycle, a sacred loop woven into the very fabric of their architecture. The Temple of Kukulkan isn't merely a pyramid, it's a mathematical manifesto. Its 4 sides each have 91 steps, totaling 364. Add the platform at the top, and you've got the 365 days of the solar year. But the genius doesn't stop there. The Maya layered their calendars like nesting dolls, the Tzolk'in, a 260-day sacred cycle, intertwined with the Hobbs solar year, creating a grand cosmic rhythm that repeated every 52 years. Their temples weren't just monuments to gods, they were gears in a vast celestial machine, predicting eclipses, tracking Venus, and even marking the precession of the equinoxes. Then there's the symbology. Those serpent carvings aren't mere decoration. Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, wasn't just a deity, he was time incarnate, his undulating body representing the cyclical nature of existence. When the shadow serpent appears during equinoxes, it's more than a light show. It's a reenactment of creation itself, a moment when the boundary between heaven and earth thins, and the divine touches the mortal realm. The Maya believed these alignments weren't coincidences but conversations, a dialogue between humanity and the cosmos. But why go to such lengths? Why carve entire mountains into timekeepers? Because for the Maya, the future wasn't a mystery, it was a pattern written in the stars and mirrored in their temples. By encoding their knowledge into stone, they ensured it would outlast empires, survive conquests, and whisper to generations unborn. Today, as modern astronomers confirm the accuracy of Maya predictions, we're left wondering, were these temples observatories, or were they something more? Portals to understanding, perhaps, or even warnings. After all, their long count calendar didn't just track days, it prophesied epochs, hinting at cycles of destruction and rebirth that still haunt our imagination. So when you stand before a Maya pyramid, remember, you're not just looking at ruins, you're standing inside a clockwork universe where every stone is a second hand, every shadow a celestial hour. And the most chilling question of all, what other messages did they leave for us, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right light to reveal them? The Parthenon stands on the Athenian Acropolis like a frozen hymn to perfection, its marble curves defying time itself. At first glance, it's a temple, but look closer and you'll see a masterclass in coded meaning. Every inch of this structure whispers the Greek obsession with balance, from the gentle swelling of its columns to the exacting ratios governing its design. Those columns aren't just load-bearing, they're visual poetry. The Doric pillars taper slightly as they rise, a subtle trick called intosses that makes them appear straighter to the human eye, as if the very stones are straining toward the divine. Then there's the math, the golden ratio, that magical proportion found in seashells and galaxies, woven into the Parthenon's floor plan. The width to height, the spacing between columns, even the curve of the stylobate, all calculated to create a harmony so precise, it feels less like architecture and more like music turned to stone. But this wasn't just about aesthetics. For the Greeks, beauty was a moral imperative, a reflection of cosmic order. The Parthenon wasn't merely a house for Athena, it was a manifesto declaring that human reason could mirror the perfection of the gods. The friezes tell another story. While the Egyptians hid their symbols in hieroglyphs and the Maya in celestial alignments, the Greeks wore their myths on their sleeves, literally. The metopes above the columns depict epic battles, gods versus giants, lapiths versus centaurs, each panel a moral allegory carved in marble. The pediment statues. Their frozen theater, with Athena's birth unfolding in divine choreography. Every sculpture, every triglyph was a sermon in stone, teaching civic virtue and divine favor to anyone who gazed upward. But here's the real genius, the Parthenon's imperfections. The floor curves slightly upward, the columns lean inward, all intentional distortions to counteract optical illusions. From a distance, these tweaks make the temple appear flawless, proving the Greeks understood perception as deeply as geometry. This wasn't just building, it was psychological artistry, a dialogue between structure and spectator that still influences architects today. Centuries later, echoes of the Parthenon ripple through Western architecture. Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, a neoclassical nod to Greek ideals, the U.S. Supreme Court building, practically a Parthenon in a powdered wig. Even modern skyscrapers, with their tapered silhouettes and rhythmic fenestration, owe a debt to those Athenian architects who first married math to meaning. The Greeks didn't just build temples, they built a visual language of democracy, reason, and human potential, one that still speaks volumes in every courthouse, museum, and Capitol dome that mimics their style. So the next time you see a grand building with stately columns, ask yourself, is this just architecture, or is it a descendant of that Athenian dream where every line, every proportion, still carries the ghost of a civilization that believed stones could sing? Step inside a Gothic cathedral and you're not just entering a church, you're stepping into a coded manuscript written in stone and stained glass, those looming gargoyles perched on the eaves. They weren't just medieval rain spouts. Each grotesque figure was a morality play in miniature, warning the faithful of sin's consequences with their twisted forms. A lion devouring a sinner, a demon clutching a miser's purse. These weren't random nightmares. They were sermons carved in granite, meant to stir the soul as much as the stained glass saints inspired it. Then there's the rose window, that radiant wheel of colored light dominating the facade. At first glance, it's just breathtaking artistry, but trace its geometry, and you'll find layers of hidden meaning. The 12 petals might mirror the apostles, the 4 lancets below could represent the Gospels, and the circular form itself, a symbol of eternity with no beginning or end. But look deeper, and some scholars spy alchemical secrets woven into the glass. The reds and blues aren't just pretty, they might signify the great work, the transformation of base matter into spiritual gold. Even the positioning is deliberate. At Chartres Cathedral, the rose window aligns so the summer solstice sun floods the nave, painting the floor with fleeting symbols of light that vanish as quickly as they appear. A reminder, perhaps, of divine grace here one moment, gone the next. Beneath your feet, another puzzle unfolds, the labyrinth. Not a maze to lose yourself in, but a single, winding path leading inexorably to the center. Pilgrims who couldn't journey to Jerusalem would walk these circuits on their knees, their physical struggle mirroring the soul's winding path to salvation. The most famous at Chartres spans nearly 40 feet, its 11 concentric circles echoing the layers of spiritual ascent. But here's the twist, some labyrinths overlay perfectly with the cathedral's rose window above, creating a vertical axis where earth meets heaven, where human striving intersects with divine light. Now consider the building's bones, those soaring vaults and flying buttresses. They weren't just engineering feats, they were theological statements. The verticality pulls your gaze upward, forcing you to literally look to the heavens, while the skeletal structure lets the walls dissolve into glass, bathing the interior in ethereal light. This was Gothic alchemy turning heavy stone into something weightless, tangible matter into transcendent glow. Even the floor plan whispers secrets. The cross-shaped nave isn't just symbolic. At certain cathedrals during specific feast days, the sun's path traces the crucifixion itself along the aisles, as if the cosmos itself were reenacting the Passion. So why hide all this meaning? Why not spell it out plainly? Because medieval builders understood the power of the hidden. A symbol discovered feels like a revelation, a personal epiphany. And perhaps they knew that some truths can't be shouted, only whispered, only glimpsed in the play of light through glass or the shadow of a gargoyle at dusk. These cathedrals were more than houses of worship. They were interactive scriptures inviting every visitor to read between the lines, and the most tantalizing question of all. What older knowledge might lie beneath them, when Notre Dame's spire catches the solstice sun, or when certain carvings depict green men, those leafy-faced figures straight from pagan folklore? It hints at a dialogue between the old world and the new. Were these builders preserving something ancient, dressing it in Christian garb to keep it alive? The stones won't tell, but they'll keep whispering if you know how to listen. Crossing the threshold of a Hindu temple, you don't just step inside a building, you enter a living diagram of the cosmos. Every inch of these sacred spaces pulses with intention, from the lotus blossoms carved into pillar bases to the dizzying heights of the gopurams, those towering gateways that seem to scrape the sky. These aren't arbitrary designs, they're blueprints of the universe, meticulously crafted to mirror the divine order. Take the mandala, that intricate geometric pattern etched into temple floors and ceilings. It's not just art, it's a cosmic map with concentric circles and squares representing the layers of existence: earth, atmosphere, heavens, all radiating outward from a sacred center. The lotus motif appears everywhere, and for good reason. In Hindu cosmology, the universe itself is said to have blossomed from a golden lotus floating on the waters of chaos. So when you see lotus petals framing doorways or pooling beneath deities, it's more than decoration. It's a visual hymn to creation, a reminder that beauty can rise from murky depths, just as enlightenment emerges from life's struggles. Even the temple's layout follows this symbolism. The innermost sanctum, the Garbhagriha or womb chamber, sits at the heart of the mandala, dark and cave-like, mirroring the primordial void from which all life springs. But the real genius lies in the alignments. Hindu temples don't just face any direction, they're oriented with celestial precision, often aligned to solstice sunrises or specific constellations. The Konark Sun Temple in Odisha is a masterclass in this. Designed as a colossal stone chariot for the sun god Surya, its wheels double as sundials, casting shadows that mark the hours with uncanny accuracy. The entire structure is a clock, a calendar, and a shrine fused into one. Then there are the gopurams, those monumental gateways adorned with hundreds of sculpted deities. Climbing toward the heavens, they're not merely entrances, they're spiritual staircases. Each tier represents a step closer to enlightenment, with a chaotic profusion of carvings at the base depicting earthly temptations and myths, giving way to simpler, more refined forms as you ascend. By the time you reach the pinnacle, the ornamentation fades, symbolizing the shedding of worldly distractions to attain pure consciousness. Why go to such lengths? Because for ancient Hindu architects, building a temple wasn't about construction, it was about consecration. They believed that by encoding cosmic principles into stone, they could create a tirtha, a crossing point where the human and divine realms intersect. The temple wasn't just a place to worship, it was a tool for transformation, designed to guide devotees through layers of spiritual awakening with every step, every glance, every aligned corridor. Modern science even hints at the wisdom behind these designs. Studies show that the precise reverberation times in temple halls, calculated through careful proportions and materials, can alter brainwave patterns, inducing meditative states. Those labyrinthine corridors leading to the sanctum, they force a slowing of pace, a physical shedding of haste that mirrors the mental quietude needed for prayer. Even the play of light through strategically placed windows, illuminating deities only at certain times of day, creates moments of revelation, as if the gods themselves are speaking through the architecture. So the next time you see a Hindu temple, don't just admire its grandeur. Look for the layers, the lotus that births the universe, the mandala that maps existence, the gopuram that charts the soul's ascent. Because these structures aren't just stone and mortar, They're guidebooks to the infinite, written in a language of symbols that still whispers to those willing to listen. Walking through the crimson gates of Beijing's Forbidden City, you're stepping into a masterclass of Feng Shui, where every courtyard, every pillar, even the placement of a single rock was calculated to harmonize with the invisible currents of Kai. This wasn't just imperial grandeur, it was a lifeline. The sprawling complex aligns perfectly north to south, its central axis a backbone of cosmic balance, flanked by protective black tortoise hills to the rear and the vermilion bird expanse of Tiananmen Square to the front. These weren't poetic nicknames, they were vital anchors in a system that saw geography as living anatomy, where mountains were dragons and rivers were veins carrying the breath of life itself. Feng Shui's roots dig deep into Taoist soil, reflecting the dance of yin and yang, the idea that opposites intertwine to create equilibrium. Take the classic Sihayuan, the traditional Chinese home. Its enclosed square layout isn't just practical, it's a microcosm of the universe. The main hall faces south to greet the sun's yang energy, while shaded northern rooms nurture yin's cool repose. Even the humble screen wall just inside the gate serves a purpose, to deflect chaotic energy while allowing prosperity to flow inward like a gentle stream. This wasn't superstition, it was urban planning as spiritual practice, where a misaligned door could mean more than bad decor. It might invite famine or strife. Water features reveal another layer of genius. In Feng Shui, water symbolizes wealth, but its placement is a precise science. The Forbidden City's golden water river doesn't meander randomly. It curves like a ribbon around the throne hall, slowing Kai's flow to nourish the emperor's power. Contrast that with the cascading fountains of a merchant's home, designed to mimic the rush of abundance. Yet both obey the same rule: water must never stagnate or rage uncontrollably, just as Taoism teaches that life thrives in the balance between action and stillness. Then there's the art of mountain and water theory. The ideal site nestles against protective hills, the dragon's back, with a winding river at its feet, mirroring the Taoist principle of Wu Wei, effortless action. Look at Hangzhou's West Lake, a masterpiece of engineered harmony where pagodas perch on hills to anchor Kai, while bridges arch like calligraphy strokes to guide energy's flow. Even in modern Hong Kong, skyscrapers like the Bank of China Tower negotiate Feng Shui battles with neighboring structures, their angles designed to deflect poison arrows of hostile energy, proving that ancient wisdom still shapes steel and glass. But Feng Shui's deepest lesson might be its view of interconnectedness. A crack in a courtyard tile wasn't just a repair job. It signaled disrupted Kai that could ripple through a family's health and fortunes. This reflects Taoism's web of existence, where a butterfly's wingbeat might stir a distant storm. Today, as scientists study how room layouts affect stress hormones or how urban greenery boosts mental health, they're inadvertently echoing what Feng Shui masters knew millennia ago. That space isn't empty. It's alive with whispers, and the way we build determines whether those whispers bless or betray us. Rising from the Salisbury plain like a skeletal hand grasping at the sky, Stonehenge has puzzled generations with its silent, stoic presence. This prehistoric ring of standing stones isn't just a monument, it's a riddle wrapped in mystery, layered with meanings that shift like the sunlight through its iconic trilithons. The most obvious clue lies in its alignment. During the summer solstice, the rising sun pierces precisely through the heel stone, casting a blade of light across the inner circle. In winter, the setting sun frames the altar stone in a golden embrace. These aren't accidents. They're proof that whoever built Stonehenge understood the heavens with startling precision, turning stone into a celestial clock that marked the turning of seasons, the ebb and flow of life itself. But here's where it gets intriguing. Stonehenge wasn't just a solar calendar. Beneath its shadow lies a necropolis, a landscape of the dead. Excavations reveal cremated remains buried in the Aubrey holes, the circular pits surrounding the stones. Some scholars believe these weren't mere graves but ritual deposits, offerings to ancestors or deities tied to the land's fertility. Imagine it, as the solstice sun bathed the stones in light, the living might have gathered to honor their dead, weaving together cycles of harvest and lineage in a single sacred act. Then there's the blue stones, the smaller, oddly colored rocks hauled over 150 miles from Wales. Their presence defies logic until you consider ancient legends. These stones were said to have healing properties, their blue-gray hue linked to mystical waters and curative powers. Medieval texts even claim Merlin transported them by magic. Could Stonehenge have been a prehistoric Lourdes where pilgrims came seeking cures, drawn by the stone's whispered reputation? The wear patterns on some blue stones suggest they were rubbed or chipped away over centuries, as if visitors carried fragments home as talismans. The real enigma, though, isn't just what Stonehenge was, it's how it was built. The Sarsen stones, some weighing over 25 tons, were dragged across miles without wheels or beasts of burden. The lintels perched atop them are locked in place with mortise and tenon joints, a woodworking technique applied to stone with eerie skill, and the entire structure is subtly curved to account for optical illusions, making it appear perfectly level on uneven ground. This level of sophistication suggests more than brute force. It hints at lost knowledge, an understanding of engineering and astronomy that rivals modern science. So who were these architects? The prevailing theory points to the Beaker people, a Bronze Age culture known for their metalwork and trade networks, but newer discoveries muddy the waters. Nearby settlements like Durrington Walls reveal massive feasting pits filled with animal bones, evidence of grand gatherings that might have coincided with solstice rites. Were these builders hosting festivals to unite scattered tribes, using Stonehenge as both a ceremonial hub and a cosmic anchor? Perhaps the most haunting question isn't about purpose but persistence. Stonehenge wasn't built in a single generation. It evolved over centuries, each phase reflecting shifting beliefs, technologies, and needs. The earliest version was a simple earthwork followed by wooden posts, then the iconic stones. This wasn't just construction, it was a conversation across time, a dialogue between generations who kept adding to the mystery, layer by layer. Today, as lasers scan the stones and reveal hidden carvings of daggers and axes, we're reminded, Stonehenge was never meant to be solved. Like all great symbols, it's a mirror reflecting back whatever questions we bring to it. Whether it was a temple to the sun, a bridge to the afterlife, or a hospital for the sick, one truth remains: it was designed to endure, to outlast its makers, and to keep its secrets close, even as the modern world clamors for answers. Stretching over a quarter-mile through the Ohio Valley, the Great Serpent Mound coils across the landscape like a petrified river, its sinuous body undulating with purpose. From above, this earthwork isn't just a snake, it's a celestial map. The serpent's open jaws align with the summer solstice sunset, while its coiled tail points to the winter solstice sunrise, framing the year in a single, unbroken gesture. But the real marvel lies in its curves. Some researchers suggest they mirror the constellation Draco, the dragon, as it would have appeared in the night sky over 1,000 years ago. Others see the crescent moon or even the path of a comet in its winding form. This wasn't just art, it was a sky story pressed into the earth, a way to anchor the cosmos to the soil beneath the builder's feet. Now shift your gaze to Cahokia, where Monk's Mound rises like a stepped pyramid from the Mississippi floodplain. At its zenith, priests once stood atop a wooden temple, watching the equinox sun rise directly over a distant mound to the east, a precision alignment that transformed the entire complex into a solar observatory. The surrounding wood henge, a circle of cedar posts, tracked the seasons like a wooden clock, its shadows marking planting and harvest times. But Cahokia's genius wasn't just in individual mounds. The entire city was a geometric puzzle, with plazas and pyramids arranged in Pythagorean triangles and perfect circles, suggesting a grasp of mathematics that rivals the Greeks. What's haunting is how little we know of the ceremonies that animated these spaces. The great Serpent Mound's builders left no written records, but archaeoastronomers note something eerie. The serpent's body aligns with the Taurid meteor stream, a debris field linked to catastrophic comet impacts in ancient times. Could this mound be a warning, a prayer, or a memorial to some long-ago disaster? At Cahokia, excavations reveal ceremonial caches, bundles of arrows, strings of shell beads, even the remains of young women buried with celestial symbols hinting at rituals that bound earth and sky, life and death. The most striking parallel, both sites seem to echo a universal language. The serpent, a symbol of rebirth in cultures from the Maya to the Norse, slithers through global myth as a guardian of knowledge. The pyramid, from Egypt to Mesoamerica, consistently represents the meeting point of heaven and earth. These Native American builders, separated by oceans and centuries from other great civilizations, arrived at the same profound idea, that the sacred could be shaped from dirt and grass, that the stars above could be pulled down and woven into the land. Today, as drones map these earthworks with laser precision, revealing hidden geometries and erased structures, we're left with a humbling thought. These weren't primitive piles of dirt. They were textbooks in turf, their lessons written in alignments and angles, and the greatest lesson of all, that civilization isn't measured by the permanence of its materials, but by the depth of its ideas. The mounds still stand not because they were built of stone, but because they were built of meaning, and meaning, it seems, is the one thing time can't erode. Step into the courtyard of the Alhambra, and you'll find yourself enveloped in a symphony of swirling arabesques, geometric vines that twist and interlock across walls, ceilings, and arches with hypnotic precision. At first glance, these patterns seem purely decorative, but look closer, and you'll notice something extraordinary. They never end. Each line flows seamlessly into the next, creating an infinite loop that defies the eye to find a beginning or an endpoint. This isn't just artistry, it's theology in tangible form. In Islamic tradition, where depicting the divine in human form is forbidden, these unbroken patterns become a visual metaphor for the eternal, the unchanging nature of God. The very act of tracing them with your gaze becomes a meditative practice, a reminder that creation is a boundless tapestry woven by an unseen hand. Then there's the calligraphy, elegant Quranic verses snaking across marble and tile like frozen whispers of devotion. Unlike the static inscriptions of other cultures, Islamic calligraphy breathes with movement. The letters stretch, curve, and dance, transforming sacred text into living art. Take the Shahada, the declaration of faith, often inscribed above mosque doorways. Its fluid script isn't just a statement, it's an invitation. The elongation of certain letters mirrors the elongation of time, stretching toward the infinite, while the compact clusters of others symbolize the density of divine wisdom. Even the materials speak. Glazed tiles reflect light differently throughout the day, making the words appear to shift and glow, as if animated by something beyond human craft. But why this obsession with pattern and text? Because Islamic cosmology sees the universe as a book, the Quran as the literal word of God, and nature as its physical manifestation. The repetition of geometric motifs, stars, hexagons, tessellating polygons isn't arbitrary. It mirrors the repetitive rhythms of the cosmos, the orbits of planets, the cycles of day and night, the recursive growth of crystals and flowers. The octagon, a favorite in Islamic design, reflects the 8 angels said to carry Allah's throne, while the 12-pointed star nods to the zodiac, bridging celestial and earthly realms. These shapes aren't just symbols, they're equations, visual representations of a universe governed by mathematical harmony. The mihrab, that niche in the mosque wall indicating the direction of Mecca, offers another layer of meaning. Framed by concentric arches and glowing with gold leaf calligraphy, it's more than a navigational aid. The arch's curve mimics the vault of heaven, while the nested patterns around it evoke the layers of creation, earth, sky, and the divine beyond. Step back and the entire mihrab becomes a doorway not just to Mecca but to the infinite. The absence of figurative art isn't a lack, it's a deliberate void, a space where the believer's imagination can meet the formless divine. Modern mathematicians have marveled at the sophistication of these designs. The Jiri tiles used in medieval mosques employ complex quasi-crystalline geometry, a concept Western science wouldn't formalize until the 20th century. These patterns could tile a surface endlessly without repeating, a visual echo of Islam's emphasis on God's infinite creativity. Even the act of crafting these designs was sacred. Artisans often worked from the center outward, a metaphor for the soul's journey from the self toward the boundless. So the next time you stand beneath a Muqarna's dome, its honeycombed cells dissolving into shadow, remember, you're not just looking at architecture, you're witnessing a cosmology, a philosophy, a prayer etched in stone and tile. These buildings don't just house worship, they enact it, guiding the eye and the spirit toward the eternal, one perfect, unbroken line at a time. High above the stone floors of Egypt's Dendera temple, the heavens themselves seem to press down upon the earth. The ceiling here isn't just painted, it's a mirror, a sprawling map of the night sky frozen in pigment and plaster. The zodiac takes center stage, its familiar constellations Leo, Scorpio, Taurus intertwined with Egyptian deities, as if the gods themselves were woven into the fabric of the cosmos. But this wasn't mere decoration. The entire temple was designed as a celestial instrument, its axis aligned so that the rising sun on the summer solstice would flood the inner sanctum, illuminating the goddess Hathor's statue like a divine spotlight. For the ancients, this alignment wasn't symbolic. It was sacred mechanics, a way to sync earthly rituals with the clockwork of the universe. Halfway across the ancient world, in the ruins of a Roman villa in Tunisia, another zodiac whispers secrets. The El Gem mosaic lays out the celestial wheel with startling precision, each sign paired with its ruling planet and seasonal attributes. But look closer and you'll notice something curious. The artist tweaked the traditional order, placing Aries at the center rather than the usual solar focus. Some scholars believe this reflects a local cult's belief in Aries as a protective force, a reminder that even universal symbols were tailored to local beliefs. These mosaics weren't just floor art, they were personal horoscopes etched in stone, blending astrology with daily life in a way that would feel eerily familiar to today's star sign enthusiasts. Why this obsession with the stars in stone? Because for ancient builders, the zodiac wasn't just a pretty pattern, it was a bridge between realms. In Babylonian temples, zodiacal symbols marked sacred thresholds, their positions calculated to harness planetary energies during rituals. The Greeks took it further, designing entire cities like Pergamon as microcosms of the heavens, with temples dedicated to zodiacal deities strategically placed to mirror celestial alignments. Even the humble Roman bathhouse often featured zodiac mosaics, turning a routine soak into a communion with cosmic forces. The deeper truth lies in the way these symbols functioned as a shared language. The Dendera zodiac depicts the same bull and twins found in Mesopotamian seals and Mayan codices, proving that disparate cultures saw similar stories in the stars. This wasn't coincidence, it was a testament to humanity's universal urge to find meaning in the night sky. Temples became observatories, priests doubled as astronomers, and myths were etched into architecture so they'd outlast the spoken word. Perhaps the most profound example lies hidden in plain sight, the octagonal dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. While its golden dome gleams with Islamic artistry, scholars note its alignment echoes ancient solstice markers, while its 8 walls subtly reference the eightfold division of the zodiac in medieval astrology. Here, as in Dendera and El Gem, the message is clear whether you're pharaoh, emperor, or caliph. The heavens were the ultimate architect, and earthly builders were merely translators, turning celestial rhythms into stone and mortar. Today, as modern astronomers decode ancient star maps with software, we're left with a humbling realization. These builders didn't just track the stars, they believed the stars tracked back. Every aligned temple, every zodiac ceiling was a prayer in physical form, an attempt to tether human destiny to the turning of the cosmos. And in that ambition, they succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Because long after their names were forgotten, their buildings still whisper to the sky, and the sky still answers. Hidden beneath the soaring arches of Chartres Cathedral, between the folds of saints' robes and the petals of stone flowers, an alchemical secret whispers. Look closely at the north portal's carvings, and you'll spot the Ouroboros, the serpent devouring its own tail, tucked discreetly beside biblical scenes. This ancient symbol of cyclical rebirth wasn't placed there by accident. Medieval stonemasons, particularly those linked to the enigmatic guilds that built Europe's sacred spaces, often wove esoteric knowledge into their work like threads in a tapestry. The phoenix rising from flames on a cathedral boss, the cryptic green man peering from a rose window's edge, these weren't whimsical decorations, they were breadcrumbs left for those who knew how to read them. Consider the Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, a symphony in stone that's been called a Bible for the illiterate. Its pillars bloom with carvings of maize, a plant unknown in 15th century Europe, alongside alchemical symbols like the caduceus and the double-headed eagle. Some researchers believe these motifs weren't just artistic flourishes but visual ciphers, encoding everything from herbal remedies to astrological charts. The chapel's apprentice pillar is particularly telling. Its spiraling vines mirror the alchemical great work, the transformation of base matter into spiritual gold. Legend claims the pillar's young carver was murdered by his master for completing it too perfectly, a grim nod to the deadly seriousness with which these secrets were guarded. But why hide such knowledge in plain sight? The answer lies in the perilous times these builders inhabited. During the Renaissance, when the Medici palaces of Florence were being adorned with hermetic imagery, solar discs, androgynous figures, and celestial maps, possession of esoteric texts could mean heresy charges or worse. Architects like Leon Battista Alberti, who designed churches with Pythagorean proportions and embedded alchemical metaphors in their facades, walked a razor's edge. By encoding their wisdom in architecture, they preserved it under the church's very gaze, trusting that only fellow initiates would recognize the symbols. The Vatican's own San Pietro in Montorio hides a startling example: Bramonte's Tempietto, a small but mathematically perfect shrine said to encode the dimensions of the cosmos in its columns and dome. The real smoking gun, though, might lie in the stained glass. At Sainte-Chapelle in Paris, the windows blaze with more than biblical narratives. Certain panels, when studied at specific times of day, project colored light onto floor patterns that form alchemical sigils, a fleeting revelation visible only to those standing in the right place at the right moment. This wasn't just theater, it was a test. Only the patient observer, the true seeker, would witness the transformation of light into symbol, much like the alchemist's quest to turn lead into gold. So were these builders members of secret societies? The evidence tilts toward yes. Guilds like the Compagnonnage in France and Germany's Steinmetzen required years of initiation, during which apprentices learned sacred geometry alongside stonecraft. Many of their symbols, the square and compass, the all-seeing eye, later resurfaced in fraternal orders like the Freemasons. Even the layout of certain cathedrals mirrors Masonic lodges, with their symbolic east-west orientations and hidden chambers. Yet perhaps the most compelling clue is the recurring presence of the Book of Stone, a medieval concept that treated architecture as a living text, with every capital, every finial forming a letter in some grand arcane alphabet. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. These structures were never just shelters for prayer. They were libraries of light and shadow, their walls whispering secrets to those with eyes to see. And the most tantalizing question of all, how much of this coded knowledge still waits undiscovered in the very places millions of tourists pass through every year, unaware they're walking through a puzzle carved in stone. Stretching across the Breton countryside like a petrified army, the Karnak stones stand in eerie silence, thousands of weathered megaliths arranged in perfect rows over 4 miles. Unlike the clustered circles of Stonehenge, these monoliths march in disciplined lines, some towering twice the height of a person, others worn low like ancient teeth. The sheer scale defies logic. Who needed to move nearly 3,000 stones, some weighing over 300 tons, and why? Local legend claims they were Roman soldiers turned to stone by a wizard, but the truth is far more intriguing. These stones predate Rome by millennia, erected by a culture that left no written records, only this cryptic geometry pressed into the earth. Theories spiral as wildly as the lichen patterns on the stones themselves. Some researchers argue the alignments mirror celestial events, the northernmost rose pointing toward sunrise at the summer solstice, while others frame the moon's extreme northern standstill. French archaeologist Pierre Meyrault proposed they were seismic predictors, their placement reflecting underground fault lines, though skeptics counter that earthquakes rarely trouble this tranquil coast. Then there's the ley line hypothesis, that Karnak sits atop invisible energy currents, its stones acting as conduits between terrestrial and spiritual realms. It's a romantic idea, but one that crumbles under scrutiny. Modern surveys show no measurable energy anomalies, and the lines often zigzag unpredictably. Perhaps the most compelling clue lies beneath the soil. Recent ground-penetrating radar revealed buried structures, pits, post holes, even the ghostly outlines of wooden enclosures, suggesting Karnak was a living landscape, not just a static monument. The stones might have anchored rituals, their rows guiding processions for solstice ceremonies or funerary rites. Nearby, dolmens and tumuli hold the bones of the Neolithic dead, hinting at a connection between the standing stones and the ancestors. Imagine it, under the pale Breton sky, mourners winding between these monoliths, the stones not just markers but silent participants in a dialogue with the unseen. Yet the most haunting question isn't about purpose, it's about persistence. Karnak wasn't built in a generation. The earliest stones rose around 4,500 BCE, with new rows added over centuries, each phase reflecting shifting beliefs or needs. This wasn't haphazard. The later alignments curved deliberately to incorporate older sections, as if respecting some sacred blueprint. The builders may have vanished, but their legacy endures in folklore. Breton farmers once believed the stones moved at night, returning to their quarries to drink from enchanted springs. Even Napoleon's men reportedly tried, and failed, to topple them, their picks barely scratching the surface. Today, as drones map Karnak's hidden geometries and archaeologists debate its secrets, one truth emerges: these stones were never meant to be solved. Like all great megaliths, they resist simple explanations, reflecting back whatever questions we bring to them. Whether they were celestial calendars, ancestral temples, or something beyond our modern imagination, their power lies in their silence. They remind us that some languages don't need words, they're written in the tilt of a monolith, the gap between stones, the way shadows stretch at dawn across a field of unanswered questions. The walls of ancient Egypt didn't just shimmer with blue, they glowed with the essence of the divine. Egyptian blue, one of humanity's first synthetic pigments, wasn't chosen for its beauty alone. Crushed from a precise mix of silica, lime, copper, and natron, this radiant hue represented the Nile's life-giving waters, the vault of heaven, and the skin of gods like Amun-Ra. Temples dedicated to deities like Hathor were bathed in it, their ceilings dotted with golden stars to mirror the night sky. But this blue wasn't merely decorative, it was a boundary. When painted around doorways or on statues, it acted as a metaphysical threshold, signaling where the mortal world ended and the sacred began. Even in death, nobles lined their tombs with it, believing its luminescence would guide their souls through the underworld. Half a world away, the Maya wielded red like a blade. Their temples weren't simply painted, they were drenched in it, from the blood-red stucco of Palinx palaces to the vermilion-smeared altars of Tikal. This wasn't just any pigment. The brightest shades came from cinnabar, a mercury-rich mineral so toxic its extraction was often a death sentence. Yet the Maya prized it precisely because of its danger, linking its vivid hue to the life force of blood and the sacred fire of sacrifice. When rulers like Pakal the Great were entombed, their bodies were dusted with cinnabar powder, turning burial chambers into crimson portals between worlds. Even their murals pulsed with red scenes of rituals where nobles pierced their tongues to feed the gods, each drop of blood rendered in pigment that still vibrates with intensity centuries later. Then there's Byzantine gold, a color so luminous it seemed to defy physics. The Hagia Sophia's dome wasn't gilded for opulence alone. Its 40 million gold tessera tiles were calculated to catch sunlight at specific angles, transforming the entire space into a living manifestation of divine light. Artists didn't apply gold leaf randomly. They layered it over red clay or purple glass to deepen its glow, creating the illusion that the dome floated weightlessly above worshippers. This wasn't just artistry, it was theology in action. Byzantine mosaics reserved gold for Christ and the Virgin, their halos radiating outward to dissolve the walls between heaven and earth. In Constantinople's dim candlelight, the effect was hypnotic. Flickering reflections made the saints appear to breathe, their golden robes shimmering as if animated by something beyond human hands. But why did these cultures invest such effort into pigments? Because color was never just visual, it was vibrational. Egyptian blue's chemical composition absorbs visible light and emits infrared, a property modern scientists are only now understanding. Some theorize this made temple walls literally glow in candlelight, enhancing their otherworldly aura. Mayan red cinnabar, though deadly, was believed to harness the energy of sacrificial offerings, sealing pacts between kings and gods. And Byzantine gold's reflective properties weren't accidental. Architects knew its radiance would amplify chant reverberations, making him sound like they originated from the dome itself. These colors weren't choices, they were contracts, a way to encode spiritual truths into materials that could outlast language, survive conquests, and whisper to generations unborn. Today, as chemists replicate Egyptian blue for quantum computing or archaeologists trace cinnabar trade routes across Mesoamerica, we're reminded these pigments were more than art. They were alchemy transforming stone into scripture, light into revelation, and architecture into a language even time couldn't erase. Lions carved into the gates of ancient Nineveh weren't just decorations. They were silent sentinels, their stone eyes watching for both earthly intruders and supernatural threats. In Mesopotamia, these beasts embodied the raw power of kingship, their manes echoing the sun's rays to signify divine authority. But their role went deeper than intimidation. Beneath their paws, archaeologists have found clay tablets describing rituals where live lions were paraded during coronations, their roars interpreted as omens. A lion that refused to roar, that might delay a king's ascent to the throne, as if the animal itself held veto power over human rulers. Meanwhile, in the jungles of the Maya, the jaguar's spotted coat wasn't just camouflage, it was a map of the stars. Lords draped themselves in jaguar pelts not just to showcase hunting prowess, but to channel the beast's duality, a creature equally at home in the treetops and the underworld's shadows. The Maya believed shamans could shapeshift into jaguars, their souls traversing the cosmic layers between worlds. At Palenque, the Temple of the Jaguar hides a chilling secret, a throne carved with jaguar heads, their mouths gaping to reveal cavities where rulers likely placed sacrificial offerings. Here, the jaguar wasn't just a symbol, it was an active participant in royal bloodletting ceremonies, its image transforming stone into a conduit for divine communication. But why animals? Why not abstract shapes or human forms? Because animals carried layers of meaning no human hand could invent. The Egyptian scarab, rolling its dung ball with single-minded determination, became the ultimate emblem of rebirth, a living metaphor for the sun god Khepri pushing the solar disk across the sky. Norse ravens Hugin and Munin weren't just Odin's pets, they were extensions of his consciousness, flying daily to gather intelligence from the realms. Even the humble owl, etched onto Athenian coins, distilled Athena's wisdom into a form every citizen could recognize instantly, day or night. The most fascinating examples blur the line between symbol and substance. At Çatalhöyük, one of humanity's oldest cities, archaeologists uncovered homes with leopards sculpted into their walls, not as decorations but as three-dimensional guardians. Families buried their dead beneath these feline reliefs, as if the beasts could protect souls in the afterlife. Similarly, Hindu temple elephants aren't merely carvings. Their trunks are often polished smooth by centuries of devotees touching them for luck, the stone gradually reshaped by belief itself. These animal symbols weren't static. They evolved, migrated, and sometimes clashed. The dragon, for instance, slithered from Mesopotamian chaos serpents to Chinese imperial emblems, changing form with each culture it entered. In the West, it became a monster to be slain. In the East, a rain-bringer whose whiskers dictated flood seasons. This adaptability reveals a profound truth. Ancient architects didn't just use animal symbols, they collaborated with them, allowing the creature's innate traits to shape humanity's understanding of power, mortality, and the divine. So the next time you see a griffin on a medieval cathedral or a serpent coiled around a Mesoamerican stela, remember, you're not just looking at art, you're witnessing a conversation that began when humans first looked into the eyes of beasts and saw something staring back. Something familiar yet infinitely mysterious, something that whispered across the millennia that we were never truly alone in the cosmos. The Romans didn't just build aqueducts to deliver water, they built them to deliver divinity. Every arch of the Pont du Gard, every mile of lead pipe snaking beneath ancient streets was more than engineering, it was a hymn to the sacred. Water wasn't merely a resource, it was a living force, a gift from the gods themselves. The aqueducts that fed Rome's fountains and baths weren't just functional, they were ceremonial. The moment water poured from a nymphaeum into a sunlit courtyard, it transformed. It became a symbol of abundance, of civilization's covenant with the natural world. Even the public baths, where citizens gathered to wash and socialize, doubled as temples to hygiene and health, their steam-filled halls echoing with prayers to Asclepius, the god of healing. The sound of flowing water wasn't just background noise. It was the pulse of the empire, a reminder that life, like the Tiber, was constantly moving, constantly renewed. Now shift your gaze to Angkor Wat, where water wasn't just channeled, it was choreographed. The vast moats surrounding the temple weren't mere defenses, they were mirrors designed to reflect the heavens. During the equinoxes, the sunrise aligned perfectly with the central tower, its golden light rippling across the water like a pathway between earth and sky. The temple's intricate hydraulic system, canals, reservoirs, and spillways wasn't just about irrigation. It was a recreation of the Hindu cosmos, where the mythical Mount Meru rose from a churning ocean. The moats represented that primordial sea, and the temple's towers were the mountain's peaks, anchoring the sacred geography of the universe itself. Even the act of crossing the causeway over the moat was symbolic, a journey from the profane to the divine, with every step bringing the pilgrim closer to enlightenment. In the courtyards of Islamic palaces, water took on yet another layer of meaning. The Alhambra's general life gardens weren't just lush retreats, they were visions of paradise, meticulously designed to echo the Quran's promise of flowing rivers and shaded groves. The fountains here didn't just bubble, they whispered. Their gentle sounds masked the noise of the outside world, creating an oasis of serenity where the faithful could meditate on the divine. The geometry of the water channels was no accident either. The four-part layout, with intersecting rills dividing the space into quadrants, mirrored the Islamic concept of the four rivers of paradise water: milk, honey, and wine. To sit beside these fountains was to taste eternity, if only for a moment, but perhaps the most profound marriage of water and worship unfolded in the stepwells of India. The Rani Kai Vav in Gujarat wasn't just a place to draw water, it was a subterranean cathedral, its walls carved with over 1,000 deities, each step downward a descent into the sacred. The well's depth wasn't just practical, it was metaphorical. As monsoons filled the reservoir, the rising water would gradually submerge the sculptures, as if the gods themselves were being bathed, renewed by the life-giving force of the rains. Pilgrims would descend past scenes of creation and destruction, arriving at the water's edge not just to quench their thirst, but to witness the cyclical nature of existence, the endless dance between drought and deluge, death and rebirth. So why did these cultures invest so much ingenuity in bending water to their spiritual will? Because water was the one element that could embody contradiction. It was both fluid and unbreakable, gentle and powerful, fleeting and eternal. To control it was to harness the divine, to mirror it was to reflect the heavens, and to drink from it was to taste the very essence of life itself. The tree of life isn't just a symbol, it's a bridge stretching across civilizations and centuries, its roots digging deep into humanity's collective imagination. In the stone reliefs of Assyria, it rises between winged guardians, its branches heavy with sacred fruit, a testament to the empire's belief in divine order. For the Assyrians, this wasn't mere decoration, it was cosmology carved in stone. The tree's trunk, often flanked by kings or deities, represented the axis of the world, its roots in the underworld and its crown brushing the heavens. Every pomegranate dangling from its boughs whispered of fertility, every coiled vine a reminder that life and power were intertwined. Now journey north to the mist-shrouded realms of the Vikings, where Yggdrasil, the world tree, towered over the Norse cosmos. This wasn't a gentle symbol, it was a living, suffering entity. Its roots gnawed by the dragon Nidhogg, its branches shaking with the winds of fate. Yggdrasil held the 9 worlds in its embrace. The great hall of Valhalla stood beneath one bough, while the well of wisdom bubbled at another. For the Norse, the tree wasn't just a metaphor, it was the scaffolding of reality itself. When Viking craftsmen carved its likeness into wooden portals or stone runestones, they weren't making art, they were reinforcing the very structure of existence. Then there's the Kabbalistic tree of life, its 10 sephirot glowing like jewels on a celestial diagram. In Jewish mysticism, this wasn't a physical tree but a map of creation, each sphere representing an attribute of the divine wisdom, strength, mercy. Medieval synagogues in Spain and Portugal wove these symbols into their tilework, turning floors and walls into meditative tools. To walk across them was to trace the path of spiritual ascent from the earthly realm of Malkuth up to the infinite light of Keter. The tree here wasn't rooted in soil but in the human soul, its branches reaching toward enlightenment. What's astonishing isn't just the tree's recurrence, it's the variations. In Mesoamerica, the Maya's ceiba tree pierced through layers of the underworld, its roots home to the lords of Xibalba, its trunk the realm of humans, its canopy the dwelling place of the gods. Chinese jade carvings depicted the Fusang tree, where 10 suns perched before their daily journey across the sky. Even the Bodhi tree, under which Buddha attained enlightenment, fits this pattern, a silent witness to the moment the material and spiritual worlds touched. Why does this motif persist? Because the tree is the ultimate metaphor. It's alive yet enduring, fragile yet resilient, rooted yet reaching. It mirrors our own journey, grounded in the earth but straining toward the light. And when architects carved it into temple walls or painted it across ceilings, they weren't just decorating spaces. They were encoding a truth as old as humanity itself. That growth, connection, and the sacred are branches of the same eternal tree. The labyrinth at Chartres Cathedral isn't just a pattern underfoot. It's a pilgrimage in miniature, a coiled journey toward the sacred. Worn smooth by centuries of devout footsteps, its 11 concentric circles wind toward a center once known as the New Jerusalem. Unlike mazes which taunt with dead ends, this path offers no wrong turns, only a single, serpentine route forward, forcing the walker to slow, to surrender to the rhythm of their own breath. Medieval pilgrims who couldn't trek to the Holy Land would traverse this stone spiral on their knees, their physical struggle mirroring the soul's winding ascent toward grace. But this French masterpiece isn't an anomaly. Over 4,000 years earlier on Crete, the palace of Knossos hid a labyrinth of its own, not of stone but of myth. The Minotaur's lair wasn't just a monster's den. It was a psychological battleground where Theseus's journey inward to slay the beast became a metaphor for confronting one's darkest self. What's startling is how this symbol migrates. In Hopi traditions, the Mother Earth labyrinth represents emergence from the underworld, its path echoing migrations across the Colorado Plateau. Norse sailors etched similar designs onto rocks, their spirals perhaps guiding souls to the afterlife. Even the Tohono O'odham people of the Sonoran Desert wove basket labyrinths, their patterns mapping both earthly journeys and celestial movements. This isn't coincidence, it's evidence of a shared human intuition. The labyrinth's unbroken path mirrors life's non-linear progress, the setbacks, the doubling back, the moments where the destination feels impossibly distant even as you inch closer. The genius lies in its duality. At Chartres, the labyrinth center aligns with the rose window above, creating a vertical axis where heaven and earth meet underfoot. In ancient Crete, bull-leaping rituals near labyrinth motifs fused danger with transcendence. turning physical agility into spiritual metaphor. These designs don't just symbolize journeys, they are journeys, their very structure a form of embodied prayer. Modern neuroscience hints at why they resonate. The act of walking a labyrinth engages both hemispheres of the brain, synchronizing logic and intuition, much like meditation. So why did this symbol span millennia and continents? Because the labyrinth speaks a universal language, one of struggle and surrender, of seeking and finding. Whether traced in cathedral stone or desert sand, it reminds us that every quest, sacred or secular, is ultimately about returning to center, to self, to something greater than either. And perhaps that's the labyrinth's final secret. The path may twist, but it always, inevitably, leads you home. Beneath the Great Pyramid's massive stones, whispers persist of chambers, still untouched voids detected by cosmic rays and thermal scans, their purpose as mysterious as the pyramid's own construction. In 2017, scientists announced the discovery of a hidden corridor behind the famed chevron blocks on the north face, its dimensions precise, its entrance sealed for millennia. This wasn't an isolated find. Similar voids lurk deep within the pyramid's heart, spaces too deliberate to be construction gaps. Some speculate these could be relic chambers, holding artifacts from Khufu's reign, or even the original burial vault stripped bare by ancient looters. Others suggest something more profound. Resonance chambers designed to amplify rituals, their acoustics tuned to frequencies that might have altered consciousness during sacred rites. Shift continents to the jungles of Guatemala, where LiDAR technology has peeled back the forest canopy to reveal entire networks of hidden tunnels beneath Maya pyramids. At Tikal, a labyrinth of sealed passageways winds beneath Temple 4, their walls adorned with murals of underworld deities. These weren't escape routes, they were symbolic conduits, physical manifestations of the Maya belief in Xibalba, the watery realm of the dead. In 2018, archaeologists uncovered a chamber beneath El Castillo at Chichen Itza filled with ritual objects, jade beads, ceramic censers, and most chilling, a cache of child remains, suggesting these spaces served as thresholds for communicating with the other world. European castles guard their own secrets. Beneath Dover Castle's towering keep lies a warren of medieval tunnels, including a chapel carved directly into the chalk bedrock. Its walls bear Crusader graffiti crosses scratched by knights before departing for the Holy Land. But the most tantalizing rumors swirl around Scotland's Rosslyn Chapel, where ground-penetrating radar has hinted at a vault beneath the crypt, possibly containing Templar relics or even the fabled Ark of the Covenant. The chapel's apprentice pillar, with its spiraling vines, may conceal a hollow core, a theory bolstered by anomalous acoustics detected near its base. Why hide these spaces? Some chambers protected treasures, like the hidden treasury rooms in Petra's cliffs, their entrances camouflaged by intricate carvings. Others preserved knowledge. The Vatican's secret archives house scrolls that could rewrite religious history, while Japan's Shosoin repository safeguards 8th century artifacts in a storehouse built to withstand earthquakes and time. But the most enigmatic chambers served ritual purposes. Beneath India's Padmanabhaswamy temple, 6 vaults guard unimaginable wealth, gold idols, diamond-studded thrones, but one remains unopened, its iron door lacking hinges or handles, sealed by sound waves according to legend. Priests claim opening it would invite catastrophe, a warning that echoes the curses inscribed on Egyptian tomb walls. Modern technology continues to unveil these secrets. Muon tomography, which tracks cosmic particles passing through stone, has mapped hidden chambers in the bent pyramid, while multispectral imaging has revealed lost frescoes in Pompeii's sealed villas. Yet for every discovery, new questions arise. What lies behind the 20-ton door in the Great Pyramid's so-called Queen's Chamber shaft? Why does Turkey's Derinkuyu underground city descend 18 levels, with ventilation shafts precise enough to rival modern engineering? These hidden spaces challenge our assumptions about ancient priorities. Their builders invested staggering resources to create rooms no living eye might ever see because their true audience wasn't human. They were messages to the gods, safeguards for eternity, or perhaps time capsules meant to speak across ages in a language we're only beginning to decipher. As long as stones guard their secrets, the past remains not a closed book, but one with pages still uncut. Teotihuacan's Avenue of the Dead doesn't just lead to pyramids, it charts a course through the stars. This ancient Mexican city, built over 2,000 years ago, wasn't haphazardly planned. Its grid aligns with celestial precision. The Pyramid of the Sun marks the sun's zenith passage, while the Temple of the Feathered Serpent mirrors the Pleiades cluster's position during key agricultural cycles. But this wasn't just about marking time. The entire urban layout seems to echo the Milky Way, with its pyramids and plazas mapping constellations onto the Earth. The builders weren't merely stargazers, they were architects of the cosmos, stitching heavenly patterns into the very fabric of their city. Halfway across the world, the Chinese imperial capital of Xi'an followed a similar celestial blueprint. Its grid, oriented to the cardinal directions with obsessive accuracy, mirrored the purple forbidden enclosure, the region of the sky surrounding the North Star, considered the celestial emperor's throne. Temples and gates were placed to align with lunar stations and planetary movements, turning the city into a terrestrial counterpart of the heavenly order. Even the Forbidden City in Beijing later adopted this philosophy, its layout reflecting Taoist cosmology where symmetry and alignment maintained harmony between heaven, earth, and humanity. What drove these civilizations to such extraordinary lengths? The answer lies in a shared belief that cities weren't just shelters, they were microcosms. By mirroring the heavens, planners sought to harness cosmic energy, ensuring prosperity, stability, and divine favor. The Maya city of Capon took this further. Its ball court aligned so the summer solstice sun would cast a shadow resembling the sacred twin heroes of the Papolva myth. In India, Jaipur's 18th century grid followed Vedic astrology, with each district ruled by a specific planet, its gates painted in corresponding colors. Even Angkor Wat's moats and towers replicate the Hindu universe, their measurements matching astronomical cycles down to the meter. But here's the twist, some alignments might encode warnings. The Nazca lines in Peru, those vast geoglyphs visible only from above, include alignments to solstice sunrises and mountain springs, but also to fault lines. Were they celestial maps, ritual pathways, or seismic predictors? Similarly, Egypt's Temple of Ammon at Karnak aligns not just with the winter solstice sunrise, but with the helical rising of Sirius, the star linked to the Nile's flooding. A coincidence unlikely. These alignments suggest ancient planners saw cities as living systems, where earthly survival depended on celestial synchronicity. Modern urbanists are now rediscovering this wisdom. Canberra, Australia's capital, was deliberately designed in the early 20th century with astrological symbolism, its circular, planetary streets radiating from a Capitol Hill sun. While skeptics dismiss such practices as superstition, studies reveal that cities aligned with natural light patterns, like Barcelona's sunlit grids, boost mood and productivity. Perhaps the ancients knew something we're only relearning, that the best cities aren't just functional. They're conversations with the cosmos, where every street, every stone whispers of our place in the universe. The skyline of any modern city tells a stark story: glass and steel monoliths stretching toward the clouds, their surfaces smooth, their angles sharp, their messages reduced to corporate logos glowing in the night. Compare this to the Parthenon's carved friezes or the Gothic cathedral's stone sermons, and one thing becomes painfully clear: we've stopped speaking in symbols. The shift didn't happen overnight. It began with the Industrial Revolution, when iron girders and elevators made height a commodity rather than a spiritual aspiration. Suddenly, buildings weren't just about meaning, they were about square footage, rent yields, and the fastest way to pack more people into urban grids. The Chrysler Building's Art Deco crown, with its sunburst motifs echoing ancient solar deities, might be one of the last great symbolic gestures in skyscraper design. By the time the minimalist glass boxes of the international style took over in the mid-20th century, ornament had become a crime. But was this purely a practical choice? The answer is more unsettling. Modernism's mantra, "form follows function," wasn't just an aesthetic preference, it was a philosophical rebellion. Architects like Le Corbusier openly mocked the superstitions of older styles, dismissing gargoyles and glyphs as primitive clutter. In their view, buildings should be machines for living, stripped of all unnecessary decoration. This wasn't just design, it was ideology. The Bauhaus movement took it further, teaching generations that symbolism was sentimental, that true modernity required a clean break from tradition. Yet something vital was lost in this purge. When Mies van der Rohe declared, "Less is more," he didn't anticipate how empty less could feel. Economics accelerated the trend. Post-war construction demanded speed and affordability, leaving little room for hand-carved symbolism. Curtain walls of glass and steel were cheaper to mass-produce than stone filigree. Developers realized that a blank facade could be leased to any corporation, while a building laden with cultural or religious motifs might limit its marketability. The result, a global homogenization of architecture, where a skyscraper in Dubai could be interchangeable with one in Dallas, their only distinguishing features being the logos on their doors. Even when modern architects attempt symbolism like the Burj Khalifa's abstracted desert flower silhouette, it often feels like an afterthought, a nod to tradition rather than a true conversation with it. Yet hope isn't entirely lost. Look closely and you'll find pockets of resistance. The Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, though unfinished, proves that symbolic architecture still stirs souls, its nativity facade crawling with flora and fauna that tell biblical stories in stone. In Japan, Tadao Ando's concrete chapels use light and shadow as modern-day symbols, crafting sacred spaces without a single carved angel. Even skyscrapers are rediscovering symbolism. Take Taipei 101, its segmented design inspired by bamboo, a traditional emblem of resilience in Chinese culture. These examples suggest that the language of symbols never truly vanished, it just evolved, adapting to new materials and mindsets. The deeper question isn't whether we can still embed meaning into architecture, but whether we still believe in the power of those meanings. Ancient builders carved their gods into walls because they saw the divine in every sunrise and storm. Today, our gods are efficiency and profit margins. Yet, as neuroscience confirms how profoundly our surroundings affect our psyche, how sterile spaces breed stress, while ornamented ones spark creativity, we might rediscover the wisdom of the old ways. Perhaps the next architectural revolution won't come from new materials, but from remembering that buildings were never just shelters. They're the stories we tell about who we are, cast in stone and steel. And stories, unlike glass towers, are meant to be read. Modern archaeology no longer relies solely on trowels and brushes. Today's breakthroughs happen in labs where lasers and algorithms crack codes our ancestors left behind. Take the Mayan glyphs at Palenque, once thought to be mere decoration. Using advanced 3D scanning, researchers have uncovered subtle variations in the carvings, microscopic tool marks that reveal not just what was written, but how it was written. These scans detected differences in stroke depth and angle, allowing linguists to distinguish between multiple scribes working on the same inscription. Suddenly, we're not just reading history, we're hearing individual voices from over 1,000 years ago. Artificial intelligence is pushing the boundaries even further. At the Temple of Karnak in Egypt, machine learning models trained on thousands of hieroglyphic texts have begun predicting missing fragments of damaged inscriptions with startling accuracy. One algorithm recently filled in a broken cartouche, correctly identifying the name of a previously unknown pharaoh, a discovery later confirmed by a matching seal found in a distant tomb. AI doesn't just translate, it contextualizes, cross-referencing symbols across sites to detect regional dialects or evolving religious motifs. But the real revolution lies in multispectral imaging. In Pompeii, this technology has resurrected frescoes once deemed lost to time. By analyzing how different wavelengths of light interact with pigment residues, researchers can now see beneath layers of volcanic grime, revealing vibrant scenes of daily life right down to the brushstrokes. The same technique exposed hidden star maps on the ceiling of Senenmut's tomb in Egypt, showing constellations with precision that matches modern astronomical software. These weren't just pretty patterns, they were sophisticated navigation aids, proving the ancients tracked celestial movements with tools we're only beginning to understand. What's next? The frontiers keep expanding. LiDAR technology, which uses laser pulses to map terrain through dense foliage, has uncovered entire forgotten cities in the Amazon and Cambodia. In Turkey, ground-penetrating radar recently detected a hidden chamber beneath the ancient city of Pergamon, its walls covered in symbols that may rewrite what we know about Hellenistic astrology. And quantum sensors, still in experimental stages, could one day detect magnetic anomalies in stone, potentially revealing hidden chambers in the Great Pyramid without drilling a single hole. Yet the most exciting development isn't technological, it's collaborative. Indigenous knowledge keepers are now working alongside scientists, offering insights that machines can't compute. In Australia, Aboriginal elders helped decode rock art by explaining how certain symbols marked seasonal water sources or sacred songlines. This partnership between tradition and technology is yielding something unprecedented, a fuller, richer dialogue with the past where ancient symbols aren't just deciphered but truly understood. The future of decoding isn't just about better tools, it's about better questions. As we peer deeper into these time-worn symbols, we're not just uncovering lost languages or star charts. We're rediscovering a fundamental truth: that every line, every curve, every intentional mark was a bridge between worlds, between earth and sky, mortal and divine, past and present. And with every breakthrough, we're learning how to walk that bridge ourselves. The swastika spins innocently across millennia, etched into Hindu temple walls, woven into Navajo blankets, stamped on ancient Greek coins, long before its meaning was twisted into something unrecognizable. For over 3,000 years, this hooked cross symbolized the sun's journey, prosperity, and spiritual harmony. In Buddhism, it marks the Buddha's footprints. In Norse lore, it's Odin's rolling wheel. Yet today, most viewers recoil at the sight, their understanding eclipsed by one brutal chapter of history. This isn't just about a single symbol's tragic hijacking. It's a cautionary tale about how easily meaning can be stolen, distorted, or lost when we view ancient signs through the narrow lens of our own biases. Cultural translation is a minefield. Consider the caduceus, that winged staff entwined with twin serpents, now universally recognized as a medical emblem. Few realize it's a case of mistaken identity. The symbol originally belonged to Hermes, the Greek trickster god of commerce and thieves, while the healer's staff was the rod of Asclepius, a single serpent wrapped around plain wood. The mix-up began when a U.S. Army Medical Corps misapplied the caduceus in the early 20th century, and the error spread like a virus. Now, hospitals worldwide brandish a symbol of merchants, not medicine, because someone didn't check the source material. Even well-intentioned interpretations can go awry. The dream catcher, a sacred Ojibwe talisman designed to filter negative energies, became a mass-produced trinket sold in suburban mall kiosks, stripped of its rituals and context. Meanwhile, New Age movements often repurpose Native American animal totems as personality quizzes, reducing complex spiritual guides to horoscope-style fluff. The harm isn't just cultural erasure, it's the flattening of symbols into shallow stereotypes, like turning a symphony into a ringtone. Archaeology isn't immune. For decades, scholars insisted the Nazca lines, those colossal Peruvian geoglyphs, must be astronomical calendars because Western minds assumed ancient people were fixated on tracking stars. Only recently have indigenous researchers reframed the conversation, suggesting the lines might be pilgrimage paths linking sacred water sources, their true meaning woven into oral traditions outsiders never bothered to learn. Similarly, early Egyptologists labeled temple carvings of women holding mirrors as vanity scenes, until linguists deciphered accompanying texts revealing these were actually depictions of childbirth rituals, the mirrors symbolic of the womb's reflective waters. The solution, a mix of humility and forensic rigor. When studying the Viking Valknut, three interlocking triangles often called Odin's knot, historians don't rely solely on medieval texts penned by Christian monks who had agendas of their own. They examine burial artifacts, analyze the symbol's placement alongside weapons or talismans, and compare it to similar motifs in Siberian shamanic art. Context is king. A lotus in Hindu art signifies spiritual awakening. In Egyptian murals, it's rebirth. In Mayan glyphs, it might represent the primordial swamp of creation. Same flower, different roots. Technology offers new safeguards. Spectral imaging can detect faded paint layers on artifacts, revealing how symbols evolved over centuries. Databases now catalog indigenous interpretations alongside academic theories, creating living archives where meaning isn't imposed but collaboratively explored. Most crucially, descendant communities are finally getting seats at the table, like Maori scholars correcting museum labels that mistook their ancestral carvings as war idols when they were actually teaching tools for celestial navigation. Symbols are living things. They breathe through the cultures that nurture them, and they wither when uprooted. The swastika's tragedy isn't just its corruption, it's that an ancient language of peace was silenced by violence. As we decode the past, our goal shouldn't be to project our own stories onto these shapes, but to listen for the whispers of the hands that first drew them. Because every misinterpretation isn't just an academic error. It's a broken thread in humanity's shared tapestry. Climate change isn't just melting glaciers, it's erasing history. Rising sea levels gnaw at Venice's foundations, their saltwater fingers corroding Byzantine mosaics that have survived 1,000 years. In the jungles of Cambodia, torrential rains, once rare but now increasingly fierce, dissolve the delicate carvings of Angkor Wat, washing away stories etched in sandstone. Even the dry heat that preserved Egypt's temples for millennia now turns against them, as expanding and contracting stone cracks hieroglyphs into illegibility. These aren't just buildings crumbling, they're libraries burning, each collapsed pillar a lost chapter in humanity's collective memory. Enter the digital guardians. Drones equipped with LiDAR now skim over Guatemalan rainforests, mapping every inch of Ticol's temples through the dense canopy, creating 3D models so precise they capture tool marks left by Maya masons 1,200 years ago. At Petra, laser scanners document the Rose City's fragile facades, millimeter by millimeter, while thermal imaging reveals hidden chambers eroded sandstone can no longer conceal. This isn't just preservation, it's resurrection. When Notre Dame's spire collapsed in flames in 2019, architects rebuilt it using scans taken just weeks before the fire, proving that technology can stitch time itself back together. Virtual reality takes it further. Visitors to the Acropolis can now slip on a headset and watch the Parthenon's marbles snap back into place, its painted colors restored to their original cobalt and crimson glory. In Iraq, where ISIS dynamited the ancient city of Nimrud, archaeologists use VR to reconstruct the Assyrian palaces from rubble, piecing together fragments like a cosmic jigsaw puzzle. But here's the catch: can pixels truly replace stone? A VR tour of the Lascaux caves lets millions walk through Paleolithic art without damaging the originals. But something intangible is lost when we experience these sites through screens instead of sweat, dust, and awe. The race isn't just against time, but against ourselves. Mass tourism strains these fragile sites. Machu Picchu's terraces erode under millions of footsteps, while the Great Pyramid's chambers suffer from the humidity of endless breath. Some solutions are low-tech but ingenious. Bhutan limits visitors to high-value, low-impact tourism, while Iceland's Thingvellir National Park uses timed ticketing to protect Viking assembly sites. Elsewhere, digital twins offer compromise-exact replicas like China's full-scale duplicate of the Lijiang Caves, allow tourists to satisfy curiosity without harming the originals. Yet the most profound preservation might be the quietest. Indigenous communities from Australia to Arizona are reviving traditional building techniques, teaching new generations to repair ancestral structures with the same materials and methods used centuries ago. At New Mexico's Acoma Pueblo, tribal masons mix clay and straw as their ancestors did, maintaining adobe walls that have stood since 1250. In Japan, shrine carvers still shape wood with 12th century tools, their apprentices learning to read grain patterns like sacred texts. This isn't nostalgia, it's living continuity, a refusal to let skills become relics. The question lingers: can we save the past without freezing it in amber? Technology offers a backup, but meaning lives in the cracks, the weathering, the way sunlight hits a carving at dawn. Perhaps the answer lies in balance, using satellites to monitor while letting hands heal, building digital archives while keeping stones sacred. Because these sites aren't just artifacts, they're conversations across time, and we owe it to the future to keep them speaking. From pyramids to pagodas, ancient architects spoke a silent language of symbols, turning stone into scripture. Every curve of a column, every alignment with the stars, was a deliberate choice, a message pressed into the earth like a seal into wax, meant to outlast empires and echo across millennia. These structures weren't just built, they were encoded. The Maya etched celestial equations into their pyramids, the Greeks wove geometry into their temples, and Gothic stonemasons hid alchemical secrets in plain sight. They knew something we've forgotten: that architecture is more than shelter. It's the physical manifestation of a culture's deepest truths, its fears and hopes fossilized in mortar and marble. But here's the haunting question: what happens when we stop speaking that language? Modern skylines gleam with glass and steel. their surfaces polished smooth, their meanings reduced to corporate logos and square footage. We've traded gargoyles for glass curtain walls, sacred geometry for cost-effective grids. Yet even now, traces of the old language linger. The spiral staircases in our libraries still echo the labyrinth's spiritual journey. The arched windows of grand train stations mimic the vaults of cathedrals, though few pause to wonder why these shapes stir something in us. Perhaps the real power of these ancient symbols lies in their stubborn persistence. Walk into a quiet cathedral, and you'll feel it the way the light filters through stained glass, painting the floor with fleeting colors, or how the acoustics amplify a whisper into something solemn. These aren't accidents, they're carefully crafted experiences designed to elevate the mundane into the sacred. Even secular spaces borrow this magic. Concert halls engineered to make music resonate like a choir in a nave, or museums that guide visitors along paths as deliberate as pilgrimage routes. So what symbols surround us today? Look closer. The next time you pass a monument, notice if its height mirrors the trees that once stood there, or if its materials were chosen to reflect local stone. Observe how a city's layout might still follow old trade routes or sacred alignments, buried under asphalt but not erased. The language of symbols hasn't disappeared, it's just waiting for us to relearn it. If you've ever stood in an ancient place and felt a shiver of recognition, like you've brushed against something timeless, you've already begun the conversation. The architects of the past left their messages in stone, not just for their own time, but for ours. They built for the future, trusting that someone someday would pause and listen. So tell us, where have you felt that whisper of the past? Share your stories below, and let's keep decoding history's mysteries together. Don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the hidden language of the world.